Members, we have a quorum, and it's time. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Public Works Subcommittee of the Finance Committee. In the 2022 legislative session, as at the last meeting, we approved a total of 28 proposals, total funding amounting to $95 billion, $667.5 million. We have 4 proposals to be discussed at the meeting today, all of them being new proposals from the government. The 4 funding proposals involve a total amount of $6,422.2 million. And if all these funding proposals are passed by the members, the total funding approved would be 23 proposals in total. The total funding amounting to $102,089.7 million, minus the block allocations related to the land resumption and computerization, that is $7,881.8 million. The total allocations for works projects would be $94,207.9 million. A reminder to members, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the items to be discussed today, please follow the rules of procedure, Rule 83A, that is, declare the nature of such interest before you speak. I also draw members' attention to Rule 84 of the rules of procedure, which governs voting when you have direct pecuniary interest in an item. We move to item number 1, PWSC 201WC, that is the relocation of Diamond Hill freshwater and saltwater surface reservoirs to caverns construction works, paper PWSC bracket 2022 to 23, number 27. Now this is about upgrading the remaining part of 201WC to Category A at an estimated cost of $2,334.2 million in money of the day prices. The government consulted the panel on development regarding this project on April 26th this year. Members generally supported submitting the proposal to the PWSC for consideration. The gist of the discussion has also been circulated among members on October 24th. With us here are the government officials, Deputy Secretary for Development, Mr. Roger Wong, the Principal Assistant Secretary for Development, Mr. Johnny Chen. We also have Mr. Kelvin Low, Director of Water Supplies, the Chief Engineer from the WSD, Ms. Melody Wong, as well as the Chief Engineer of the South Development Office of the CEDD, Mr. Raymond Lee. Members who would like to speak, please press the button now. And there are 4 items on the agenda. Members, please make good use of the time. Members speaking for the first round will get 4 minutes each. Now please leave some time for the government to give you a response. 7 members have pressed the button. I'll read out their name: Mr. Lam Chun Sing, Mr. Yang Wen-kit, Mr. Chen Siu Hong, Mr. Tony Tse, Ms. Starry Lee, Mr. Ten Ka-piu, and Mr. Louis Long. We will first give the floor to Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, Chair. I support more development of caverns that will free up more premium land sites for housing purposes. The site can also be used for community purposes. Some years ago, the government laid down objectives for cavern development. 40-plus sites were identified. For this one in Diamond Hill, this is one of those covered in the government's plan. My concern is about the occupational safety and health issues in cavern works. There are risks involved. This also involves tunnel works and blasting, so there are some potential hazards. Recently, we have had a number of fatal industrial accidents. The accidents we've seen are not related to caverns or tunnels, but there is a red flag when it comes to industrial accidents. Now, no, the Development Bureau is adopting technology on a pilot basis to improve work safety, say for the Chengkun O desalinization plant project. The Development Bureau is pushing ahead with a smart construction site initiative, so there are special safety helmets and also safety watchers. The goal here being the use of technology to improve occupational safety and health. The future plan is that for large-scale works projects, those involving more than $30 million, there will be greater use of technology to improve OSH. So my question for this particular cavern project, has the government identified any dangerous works procedure? What will be done about them? Will there be a greater use of technology to make it safer for workers to work on these cavern works? Now, who will take this question, please? Mr. Roger Wong. I thank Mr. Lam for his support. Safety matters a lot, especially when it comes to construction. I attach immense importance to this matter. We're using technology to create safe, smart construction sites. That's why in the contract, there is a requirement for contractors to observe all the safety measures. There are clauses to enhance safety. For example, contractors have to provide temporary ventilation facilities. They have to install real-time monitoring system for the airflow in the caverns and monitor the airflow to ensure work safety in the caverns. And also in sealed environment, they also have to be rescue teams. And these teams need to be closely in touch with the work in the contractor. There are also there's also a DFMA designed for manufacture and assembly for the components we're using, so that we're minimizing the procedures required. That's how we can have a safer work environment. Now, for the smart construction site, we will be launching the initiative on all fronts. If possible, we adopt some of the measures. Now, for the WSD, for example, measures of a smart construction site will be adopted. So, for example, smart safety helmets and smart watches for construction workers. Now, for high-risk work procedures, there will be reminders and alerts so that people can send out distress signal if needed. Now, for heavy machinery, now there will also be a monitoring system to minimize blind spots. We will have a radar. When a worker is detected to be nearby, there will be an alarm to the operator. So the worker will also be aware of the heavy machinery around. That's how we will minimize the industrial accidents, and this is how we enhance the work site safety. And next, Mr. Kitson Yang. 4 minutes for you. Thank you, Chair. Now, this is about relocating the Diamond Hill surface reservoirs. The move leads to immense concerns among the residents of Qiranshan. I have received letters from the incorporated owners of Choichok Garden. Their representatives have reflected their views to us. I thank the Development Bureau for their active responses to residents' concerns. The Development Bureau has also addressed some of the concerns raised by the local residents. I applaud this arrangement. Now, this project will cost $23 billion. We're also sacrificing 2 sites for open space, and then we can only have a small number of public housing units. It's a $23 billion money well spent. This is $23 billion. You take that to a redevelopment project in Sampo Kong, you will have way more public housing units down the line. If this is just about producing public housing units, why not spend the money on redevelopment in Sampo Kong and the vicinity? When you free up the land, will it be used exclusively for public housing units? This is prime site in Qiranshan and Wangtai-sin. No other sites are available in the area. Some of the sites will be used for the extension of the Wangtai-sin Hospital. Now, can you have other uses for the sites apart from public rental housing? Now, can you have fewer housing units but set aside more space for the extension project of the Wangtai Hospital so that you can provide A&E services, that is accident and emergency services at the Wangtai Hospital. There are 200,000 people living nearby. They need A&E services. Now there is an expansion project of the Notre Dame Hospital, but they don't have an A&E service. Deputy Secretary, please. I thank Mr. Yang for his positive comment. Now, we have been in touch with the residents of Choi Chok Garden. Now, in terms of cost effectiveness, we are trying to relocate the surface reservoirs into caverns. Now, by doing so, we can free up prime sites in the urban area. So we want to make good use of the site that we can free up. So we have conducted a feasibility study. Apart from housing development, we can also use the site for GIs, for government or community services like car parks and healthcare facilities. As Mr. Yang just said, for Wangtai Hospital, we will also set aside part of the site for healthcare services for the hospital authority on the existing land available. We will also try to resolve some livelihood issues in Qiwanshan, in places like Chioi Court. There will also be something done about the accessibility of the roads. So we will have barrier-free and pedestrian-friendly facilities to give easier access to seniors to Shengfeng Street, so that they can go shopping more easily. So we're following the principle of one site, multiple uses. We're trying to solve a number of problems with this move. Apart from housing, we will also be providing these community facilities to improve the quality of life for the local residents. So there will be multiple benefits. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Chair, in Hong Kong, we have hilly terrains over most of our land. So now you're trying to develop caverns. I support this proposal. I have 2 questions. In paragraph 16 of the paper, the government says it has adjusted the locations of the access tunnel portal and the facility so that it's further away from the residential estate. But when I look at Annex 2, the cavern complex is just 230 meters from Choi Chok Garden. That's just 200 meters or so. When you do excavation for the tunnel and the caverns, there will be blasting, and the blasting causes vibration. In paragraphs 19 and 20, the Director of the Environmental Protection has approved the environmental impact assessment and issued the permit for the works. But what about the noise? Now, there is mitigation measures covered in paper, but those are discussed in generic terms. So I want to find out more from the government. What are the mitigation measures the government will be taking to minimize the impact of the construction for the local residents? My second question has to do with water. This is a key part of everyday life. My question is, what will the government do to make sure that you have a smooth transition so that there will be no disruption to water supply for the local residents?
Yes, Deputy Secretary, thanks very much, Mr. Chen, for his support. First off, the impact on residents of Choi Chok Garden. Now, we have been maintaining communication with the residents, and in terms of vibration, we did have a fair amount of communication. Now, for this blasting work, we would conduct assessment to ascertain the level of vibration. For Choi Chok Garden, the vibration is actually lower than the limit, like 3 to 4 mm per second, and the acceptable level is 25 mm, so it is lower than the prescribed level. Now, we may conduct the assessment, but it is important to monitor the actual work, so we do have the monitoring point on the slope, retaining wall, and boulders. We do have all these monitoring points. In the course of work, we do maintain close liaison with the Tree Truk Garden to see whether more monitoring points should be added to assuage their concerns. As to the mitigation of the noise level, I defer to the Water Supplies Department and also the water supply, whether there will be any suspension and so on. I defer to the Water Supplies Department Director, Mr. Kelvin Low. Chairman, thank you. When it comes to blasting, we would conduct a blasting impact assessment. We would consider the amount of the dynamites to make sure the vibration will be kept to the minimum. And we have got the approval of the Mines Division, and the noise will be kept down. We also have some device at the entrance to the tunnel. There is a gate that can be shut in the course of blasting to keep the noise in. Yes, water supply in the course of work. Yes, please make it brief, if you will. The reservoir will be relocated to cavern first, and the existing reservoir will be demolished. So water supply will not be affected in any way. In the course of work, if we need to suspend water for a certain period of time, there will be communications with the residents nearby. And this temporary suspension would be less than half a day. And if the suspension is long, we will provide a water tank to take water there. Mr. Tony J., 4 minutes. I support the idea of maximizing the potential of the land. We can set aside or free up the land for housing and other community facilities. Now, for these projects, people in the vicinity may have their own views, and I think the government ought to address them. I think we have to have the common good in mind, and that's the best interest of Hong Kong, and I support this project. I'd like to see this go ahead as soon as possible. However, I've got a couple of questions for the administration. According to the paper, the site freed up would be for single site, multiple use, and the football pitch will be reprovisioned. As we all know, the latest figures are 0.77 in terms of football pitch provision. It's hard to form a team sometimes when it comes to football games. So can we make more use of the football pitches? And futsal is really very popular these days, so we consider this idea as well. I've got some other points to follow up on. Para 9B, site formation works at the access tunnel portal area and construction of the access tunnel. That's close to $400 million. Is some 780 meters, and it's about $1 million per square meters. We explain why it is so expensive. Para 12, the NEC, new engineering contract. I did put some questions on this before. Will you explain a little bit further the merit of this new engineering contract in terms of costing, in terms of quality of work, please? Deputy Secretary. Thanks very much, Mr. J, for his support for the project. A single site, multiple use is the overriding principle, but as I said earlier, in reprovisioning the facilities, we will not be replicating the facilities that are not well utilized, we would discuss with the relevant departments in this regard. Now, with regard to this 7-a-side football pitch, we will be providing a pitch for futsal, this 5-a-side, and we will also be providing a car park there in the light of the keen demand for parking in the area. Other than the football pitch, we will provide the fitness facilities for the senior folks, and with more space, we would be willing to do this. For the tunnel and the pricing there, this is 780 meters long, linking up with the access tunnel and the cavern cluster. Now this, we go through some soft soil layer, and this will also go through some of the weak rock bed, and the quantity is not small. So for these kind of areas, we do need to do the grouting and shotcreting before we can carry out the excavation. So with this tunnel, as indicated in the paper, we have the price tag there. But this price tag is reasonable, because if you look at a similar tunnel like the Zhongguanou Lam Tin tunnel and all the blasting work there, the pricing is really reasonable. As to the NEC, we're encouraging the adoption of a new engineering contract, because this is a risk-based approach, and this is a collaborative approach with the contractors. We try to identify the risk and address them as soon as possible, and this is working pretty well. So we will adopt the NEC going forward. Mr. Jay, well, can you explain clearly, in layman terms perhaps? I don't think people understand the benefits arising from the NEC. Will you explain to us in layman's terms what this is all about, and let us understand better? Well, if you have to go into detail about the NEC to make the public understand, I think we might need to have another meeting for this, and this is something for another occasion. But I think the Deputy Secretary has made the principle pretty clear. It is a risk-based approach. And this is not the first time we've dealt with that. Ms. Starley, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. Likewise, I'm in support of this project. We are relocating the facilities in all districts into caverns, and we can free up the available land to ease the demand for housing, healthcare, and community facilities. And in Hong Kong, if we can adopt a multi-pronged approach to develop land resources, in this very difficult period where we have the land supply, which is back-loaded, and I mean, this kind of approach is something that I'm really support. I'm grateful to the Development Bureau at the development panel, and this item was discussed. I wrote to the chairman. We had 3 sessions. We also had meetings with the stakeholders, and I've also been in touch with the department by phone and other means. Basically, they have addressed our aspirations. However, I hope that there are 2 reassurances. The first one is the planning. They have given undertaking that they would be listening to the views of the stakeholders. Other than housing, they would also consider the healthcare needs in Wong Tai Sin, Kowloon Central. Wong Tai Sin area, there is a shortfall in the healthcare supply, and this is a good opportunity for us to upgrade the facilities there. I hope that you will be communicating with more stakeholders. Now, this is a preliminary kind of approach. Now, this is the first reassurance I'm seeking. Second, despite your efforts, the Shui Garden residents are in opposition because they're worried about subsidence. They're also worried about the future maintenance, that you will give the undertaking that you will maintain communication with the objectors in the district. You should listen to their views and address their concerns. Third, timing. As I said, the housing supply is really backloaded. If you can expedite the cavern development, then it would help. Now, if this goes through, how soon are you going to get this completed? And what is the timeline like with regard to the availability of the land resources? And can you expedite this in some ways? Deputy Secretary. Thanks very much, Madam Lee, for your support. Madam Lee sought two reassurances. We're working on those. We are communicating with the Shui Garden and also healthcare facilities. We understand that the hospital authority is doing their own planning, and they keep their options open, and they would have regard to public sentiments in the provision of healthcare services. I know that work is in hand in this regard. As to the timeline, this is dear to our heart because with these caverns, it would take a pretty long time because we have to do the blasting and the excavation and so on. So we are doing very meticulous planning. During the contract stage, we would come up with ways to encourage the contractors to shorten the time needed. In the contract, we have only left some room for them to complete the project ahead of time, and there would be additional scores to be awarded. And if they can complete ahead of time, there will be a cash incentive that would incentivize them to expedite the project. Third, we are calling tender in parallel, and upon endorsement of funding, work can go ahead immediately. As regards planning, we're doing the preliminary planning. We would have regard to public views. The CEDD towards the end of 2023 will be engaging the members of the public again. Going forward, the relocation would take about 5 years' time. It will be completed in the second half of 2027, and the CEDD, together with the Plan D, will, in the event of the site formation, they will do the long-term design. They will do the rezoning and public consultation. All these will be happening. And in 2027, with the land becoming available, the CEDD can go ahead with their own project.
For the 5 years involved, that may not mean anything immediate in the 5 years. So we just hope that they can expedite things and get things started as quickly as possible. Next, Mr. Tenka-Pil, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. This is about 4 hectares of land costing $23 billion, and this even involves reprovisioning a soccer pitch. That's $600 million for each hectare. The project also involves setting up a surface reservoir in caverns. A tunnel costs $700 million. Now you also have underground projects, and there will be ventilation systems costing $300 million. The FDU supports a proposal, but I want to make this point clear. Now, for land creation, however a project costs, you have to invest in it. And then because we have to build subsidized housing, but the government should make a greater effort in creating land at a lower cost. reclamation, for example, or speeding up land creation in fringe areas, those alternatives will be cheaper than what we have here, that is $600 million per hectare. This is a costly site, so you have to follow the one site multiple use principle. Under this principle, will this also be part of the East Kowloon transport link proposed by the Transport Logistics Bureau? Now, Qiwanshan area has already missed out in the 2-mile line, which makes things inconvenient for the local residents. Now, this project is close to Qiwanshan. So if they do have an East Kowloon rail link, can you have this elevated trackless line? Can you do a spur line branch off into Qiwanshan? Are you already considering this, or has the government already considered this? Now, for the works project, there's a fill bank in Chengkwan O area 137. It has been decided that the site will be used for housing or other development purposes. So for the fill bank, there's nowhere to receive the construction waste or fill materials. Now, when you have a cavern, there will be a lot of soil debris. The debris has to go somewhere. What would you do with the debris once the fill bank is gone in area 137? Deputy Secretary, I thank Mr. Tang for his support. Now, we take a multi-pronged approach in land creation. Caverns are a key part of the strategy. It's costly to create land in caverns, but it's highly efficient. Now, we have to relocate, for example, certain facilities like sewage treatment works or refuse transfer stations. These facilities are suitable for relocation into caverns. We're also exploring the establishment of data centers, data banks. In caverns, the temperature is lower. That makes ideal environment for data centers. Now, just then, Mr. Tang mentioned the elevated trackless system in East Kowloon. This is something that falls under the purview of the Transport and Logistics Bureau. So I'm not in a position to give a response on that matter. I can certainly relate the views of Mr. Tang to the TLB. Now, for the fill bank in area 137, we take a multi-pronged approach. There will be reclamation, there will be caverns in land creation. Our plan covers a range of large-scale reclamation projects. For public works projects, construction projects, there will be construction waste. The waste can be used as fill materials for reclamation projects, so there is a plan to cover just that. The members raised questions about the transport links. The government has to consider this point. Members don't care which bureau's work this is. The government should need no reminder from members to have a collaboration and coordination between the relevant bureaus when it comes to transport links for development projects. Next, Mr. Louis Long, 4 minutes. Chair, this project costs $22.3 billion, but I support this proposal. This project will make good use of caverns, so this is worth trying. But local residents are affected by the project, and they have concerns. And I hope the government can take seriously these concerns. I have received concerns from the residents of Churchill Garden. They turn on two things. First, the impact of the construction, and second, supply of seawater. The government's response is that during construction, the government will monitor the process. Then as for the salt water supply, there are issues with the land lease, so that the government should not be the party supplying the salt water. I get that. Apart from getting in touch with the existing residents of Shui Garden, I believe the government should remain in touch with the local residents during the construction. Say after a construction starts and the settlement gets worse than expected. Does the government have any contingency plan if the settlement gets worse than you thought? The second question, the supply of salt water. I know the government isn't the one arranging the supply, but then out of respect for the contract or the land lease, are there feasible ways to help the residents there? Those are my two questions, Chair. Over to Deputy Secretary. I thank Mr. Long for his support for this project involving the caverns. Now, we have been in touch with the residents of Shui Garden on a number of issues. We have reached consensus with the local residents, and they have also expressed understanding. We will continue with our efforts on the points raised by Mr. Long. During construction, we have set up community outreach teams. We also have round-the-clock hotlines. There will be dedicated officers to address inquiries from the local residents. During the blasting, the local residents are worried about the potential impact, so we will set up monitoring spots. There will be regular reporting of the situation, and we will set up regular meetings. There will also be communication materials to update residents on the latest progress of the construction works. Now, turning to the point of the salt water supply. As we explained this matter to the residents on multiple occasions, the land lease stipulates that the residents have to construct and be responsible for the maintenance of the salt water supply. Now, we explained the difficulties on our side. After the relocation, there are technical difficulties, because doing so may upset the stability of saltwater supply for Kowloon East. We understand the residents' concerns. There is a saltwater main. During our construction works, we will keep an eye on the situation. There will be measures to protect the saltwater mains. Now, if there are old water mains due for replacement, we will do so if possible. We'll take a risk-based approach. After the construction works wrap up, we will deliver such mains to the local residents for maintenance. Next question, Professor Lau Chi-Pang, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Had this proposal been submitted a month ago, I wouldn't have said a thing. But then, last week, the Chief Executive delivered his policy address. The Chief Executive proposed to increase thousands of hectares of land for development. So that would put my remarks in context. Now, we are in a boat moving forward in time. When we were in the middle of the land supply engagement, we laid down a number of tasks, a number of things to be done. Some facilities had to be relocated into caverns. That's something we agreed back then. But I look at the proposal now. This costs $2.3 billion, creating 4 hectares of land. And it's only in 2027 that we can proceed with site formation. We haven't even come to the point as to what we will construct after 2027. Now, we agree on a point that is we take a multi-pronged approach in what we do. Everyone has tried milkshake. If there's congestion, no matter how hard you try, you cannot get the milkshake. Some straws are thicker than the others. The straw proposed by the chief executive last week was very thick. Press a button and the supply gushes out. But this proposal, this is like a very thin straw. Several years have elapsed. The market's there. We have to see if this proposal is still what we agreed on back then. My concern is that by 2027, the thousands of hectares of land were already completed, already available, while the works for this proposal are still ongoing. Something is wrong here. We are taking land already in use for redevelopment, we turn into something else. On itself, this proposal deserves support. But then in the context of today, shouldn't we be reconsidering this proposal? Should this proposal go ahead? I would like a response from the government. Deputy Secretary for Development, please. I believe the chief executive also had this site in mind when he came up with the figure of thousands of hectares. I thank Professor Lau for his comment. A multi-pronged approach is one of the things we are doing. 2/3 of the hilly terrain of Hong Kong is suitable for development of caverns. Caverns are suitable for accommodating certain facilities. For caverns, they're not as attractive as sites on the ground when it comes to facilities. But then when it comes to sewer treatment works or refuse treatment facilities, people will welcome any transfer of these facilities into caverns. So the holistic strategy is that we need to provide different kinds of land for different kinds of facilities. The caverns can accommodate certain facilities. Next, Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chair. 2 questions from me. I support this proposal. My first question has to do with the land lease concerning Choi Chuk Garden. According to the land lease, the landowners there have to be responsible. They have to pay for the slope maintenance. The works for this proposal also involves work involving the slopes. The works will also cover a large area. So will the government relieve the owners of Choi Chuk Garden of the responsibility of slope maintenance? Now turning to the impact of the works on the nearby residents and the nearby buildings. If losses are caused to the nearby residents and buildings, will there be compensation available? Will the works affect the insurance that local residents take out for their buildings? And if so, what will be done?
Thanks very much. As I said, the Choi Chuk Garden is on the slope, and the residents under the lease will have to be responsible for the retaining wall and the slope. And this is also happening to other housing complex on the slope. And there is no overlap, basically, in terms of the slope that we use. Prior to the work being undertaken, we will conduct assessment to ascertain the level of vibration. The vibration is actually lower than the prescribed limit, and it will not have any impact on the stability of the borders, retaining wall, and the slope nearby. However, we will monitor the work and we will monitor the impact on the borders, the retaining wall, and the slope. Now, Choi Chuk Garden will still have to be responsible for the maintenance of the slope. And if we relieve the Treasure Garden of the responsibility, that would be running against or running counter to the spirit of the contract. So we will help the Treasure Garden to minimize the impact. In terms of loss, if it is proved that this project gives rise to any losses, they can seek compensation from the department. The contractor will have to take out third-party liability insurance, so there will be an assessment, and the funding approved has already included this element. Any follow-up? No? Mr. Tony J. for the second round, 3 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. Well, a moment ago, I mentioned the $700 million for the construction of 780 meters of tunnel. It is about $0.9 million per meter. Now, why is it so expensive? We understand the government's justification. However, with regard to the NEC, the new engineering contract, according to the paper, this is on the basis of the Institution of Civil Engineers of the UK. Now, we are talking about the risk base, and certainly the government and the contractor will stand to benefit from this kind of contract. If you can cite some examples, it will make it easier for us to understand. Now, we're going to create 4 hectares of land out of this cavern project. We're not sure what use will be put to it. Maybe it's early days yet. And you are freeing up the land, and the last thing we want to see is for the site to be lying vacant for a long time. And this is the last thing that the public would like to see. And this is not a good way of using the public resources. If I may refer to para 31, felling of trees. It mentions that formation of around 470 square meters of grass area will be proposed. Now, how are you going to utilize this area effectively? Deputy Secretary, thanks very much, Mr. J, for the question. If I may take the question in reverse order about the trees first. We will be removing 267 trees. They're not trees of particular interest. And we will create a 470 square meters of grassed area. That's at the tunnel, at the top of the tunnel. If you can see from the annex, there will be a grassed area to tie in with the Lion Rock area. We will be liaising with various departments to see what are their only uses that can be put to the site. I agree with the member that in creating land, we should maintain liaison with other bureaus and departments. There is a lot of cross-departmental and cross-bureau collaboration. As to the NEC, the new engineering contract, perhaps the Director of Water Supplies can address the issue. Director, please. Now, for this 780-meter long tunnel, there is a fault zone there. There is some 60-meter wide fault zone, and at the entrance there are 200 meters of weak soil layer there, and we need to have stronger support during the course of an excavation to guard against any collapse. The tunnel may be 780 meters, 260 meter falls on the soft soil, and we do need to have pretty strong support, and that explains the price tag. Mr. Tay, risk assessment, risk management, can you cite some examples? Director, NEC is different from ordinary contracts. When the contractors experience any problems, they would seek damages, but with NEC is more like more collaboration. If the contractors identify any problems that might cause overspending, we would bring this up, we flag this up at our meetings, and we would come up with some mechanism to address all these potential risks. So under the NEC, there will be some compensation events, and that will enable us to address the risk before it arises, so that they will make the whole project cheaper. Mr. Lau, Deputy Secretary. Well, this is a pretty technical issue. Chairman, if you agree, I would supplement further information about the new engineering contract, the advantages and so on. Right, thanks very much. For the offer, the NEC has been around for some time. There are many projects that on this basis, not all, but many of them are or have adopted this NEC. So will you cite us some numbers, what advantages this has brought to Hong Kong? I think that will address the Vice Chair, Mr. Tony Jay's concern, and that would make things a lot clearer for the members of the public. All right, unless there are further questions, I now put this item to the vote. Will members in favor of PWSC 27, please raise their hands. Unanimous support. Thank you. Objection? 1, 2. I think members voting are in support of this project. The project is therefore endorsed. Please note Chairman, my indication has been cancelled. Yes, will the technician please have a look at Mr. Ho's buttons to see whether there are any problems. Under the Section 3 of the rule, we have to consider whether the FC will consider this item separately. That's PWSC 2022-23-27. So under 41A of the rule, I now put this to the vote. The PWSC proposes that the FC further discuss paper PWSC 27. If this is endorsed, it means that the PWSC proposes that the FC further discusses this item. If it is rejected, then there is no need for the FC to do so. So with those in favor, please raise their hands. 1. Those against, please raise their hands. And the majority are in opposition. So the item, the proposal has been rejected, and the FC is not recommended to have further discussion of this item. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Thank you very much. Officials, thank you. Item 2, 37mm, construction of a public market in Tin Shui Y, paper PWSC 2022-23-27. 28. This is to recommend the upgrading of 37 mm to Cat A at an estimated cost of $1.499 billion in MOD prices. On the 12th of July, the administration consulted the FSEH panel. The members were in support of this paper being submitted to the PWSC for consideration. The highlights of the discussion have been emailed to members for reference on the 24th of October. We have with us for this item Ms. Diane Wong, Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology, Mr. Parson Lam, Principal Assistant Secretary, Mr. Everett J., Director of Architectural Services, Ms. Ng Yi Kei, Senior Project Manager, Ms. Karen Chan, Deputy Director of FEHD, and Mr. Lokin Y, Assistant Director of FEHD. There are many members who have pushed the button. Dr. Chairman Kwong, Mr. Luk Chung Hong, Mr. Chen Xiu Hong, Mr. Chan Pui Leong, Mr. Stephen Ho, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Duncan Chiu, Mr. Tony J, Mr. Holden Chow, Mr. Gary Zhang, and also Mr. Lee Chen Kung. Dr. Chairman Kwong, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. In Tinshui Wai, there are 227,000 people. A lot of them are from the grassroots. We don't have a proper market yet, and this is a very good proposal. I am in support of the idea of building a new public market in Tinshui Wai to address public concerns and demands. Now, from the pictures, the market is really sophisticated. It's beautiful, but it is technically difficult. It is elevated. It is also at a difficult site, and the project will be completed in about 5 years' time. Now, 5 years is not a short period of time for a market. In terms of siting, other than the convenience and also it is full of footfall. Why don't you identify a location where the market can be completed earlier instead of this? Second, can you give us specific timetable for completion for public information? And third, would there be any measures to speed up the work, and would there be any temporary measures in the course of work for the members of the public to use public markets to relieve their burden? Now, for this public market, what is the operation mode like? Will it be under the management of the FEHD, or would this be contracted out? I don't think it makes sense for this to be contracted out. I hope that it will be managed by the government. Also, with this market, how can it be operated in a cost-effective manner, and how will these be made as a yardstick for the future?
Got it. Can we switch on the microphone for Ms. Diane Wong? The member raised 4 questions. Now, the site selection. We considered factors including the location, the current use or future use, the area, the size, and the transport links available. Our goal is to have an accessible market and a market that meets the needs of the local residents. We have considered the various options in Tinshui Wai, the KMB Depot, Tin Shao Hui, Girl Scouts Activity Center, and Area 107, the swimming pool there, as well as the Tin Shao Market, Area 108, as well as the public car park in the district. But due to various factors, these other options may be inaccessible or being too small, or there's local opposition. So we have picked the current site. It's close to where people live. It's also a transport hub. MTR, light rail train, and LRT and buses are nearby. We are confident that this new market will become a new landmark and can meet local residents' needs. The member has also raised concern about the construction time this would take. This has to do with the site. On Tin Fok Road, we have to maintain a smooth traffic flow during the construction work. So we have to build the structure on an elevated deck. Now there's an MTR station nearby and a light rail stop nearby. Now there is also this underground karst cave. So there are constraints we're working with. During construction, we will minimize the impact on nearby residents. So the work will be taken forward in phases. The whole thing will take 5 years. If it's possible to speed things up, we will do so where possible. Now, as to the way the new market will be operating. In Tinshui, take Skylight Market as an example. The mode of operation there is something that people have come to accept, and it has worked as intended. In the process, the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department will be the landlord, so we will be the one signing the contract. But as for the management, the cleaning, the security guards, and the promotion strategies, these are areas to be handled by contractors, because the contractors are in a better position to tell what the needs of the local people are, and they can advise on the kind of work that has to be done. Now, we will make this facility convenient for people. Now, take the Skylight Market as an example. It's a temporary market. So there will be temporary measures to make life easier for people. Next, Mr. Michael Lok. Thank you, Chair. The local residents of Tinshui have been asking for a public market for 20 years. Now, back then, I was newly elected district councillor. I thank the government for taking on board our comments. The government flatly rejected a request for a new market back then, but now there is this proposal near the light rail stop. This will be a large market, and this will cost roughly $1.5 billion. I have a simple question. What's a public market for? Chair, this is a rhetorical question. This new market is there to show that it's a government that delivers, as President Xi indicated that we should be doing to deliver. My question for the government is that will there be an enhanced tender mechanism so that this new market will not fall victim to a monopoly? Say you have 150 market stores, 10 will be for meat, but then for the 10 stores, 8 of them are really insiders in the same group, so they fix the price. They may be cronies, business associates working together. Will there be an enhanced tender mechanism so that the stores will not be monopolized by the same group of insiders, and we can avoid price fixing so that you can have real market competition? The end goal being the people can have affordable groceries. That's the whole point of having a new public market. There is a market in Tinshui, but the goods there are too pricey. So it's all about providing affordable groceries. And we also need footfall and facilitate the turnover of goods. Now, how do you get more footfall there? My proposal goes like this. Talk to the MTR Corporation, get the MTR to offer concessions. Now, there's a light rail stop going through Tinshui Hongshui Q. So for someone who shops at the market up to a certain level and they spend enough money there, they should be able to get free rides on the light rail system. Now, how do you bring people to the public market? The transport fare is something you can work on. With more people there, you're making good use of the market. Now, if you can have more goods delivered to the area, then that's how you can make the groceries affordable. Mr. Michael Lok, now your questions should have been raised at the panel because your questions touch on a wide range of matters such as the tender mechanism. Undersecretary, can you give him a brief response? Thank you, Chair. And I thank the member for his comments. Things are different now. We are moving hawkers to the market. The factors we looked at in deciding on this new market and this new location. Members raised a point about preventing a monopoly. The operation will go by the rules of a free market. This means more competition to keep prices at a reasonable level. The store owners will also look at their own costs, look at the rent, and then set a reasonable price for the goods they sell. There will be 150 stores at the new market. We will have measures. That is one owner per store. No one gets to have more than one store. Now, what if they get their friends, relatives, close business associates to take part in tendering exercise? Now, in terms of our mechanism, we will look at these things. But the principle is simple. At this market, the same person can only get one store. And as for the other technical points raised by the member, we will look into those further. And as for the rent level, 75%. Now there's a 75% weight concession in terms of the rent. Now, due to COVID, the rent levels have stayed the same. In February 2021, some community groups looked at the prices at the Skylight Market. The groceries there are 10% cheaper than elsewhere. Now, through benign competition, consumers will benefit. Turning to the transport links, this will be a highly accessible, well-connected. There will be MTR, there will be light rail transit, there will also be other means of transport. So this will be easily accessible for the local residents. They will be able to get to the market easily and they will be shopping at the new market. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. This is about a new market in Tianshui so that people have access to fresh provisions. And there will be a better environment and people will have access to public space and the public market will play a greater role in community. I support the proposal, but I want to follow up on 2 questions regarding the project. First, the cost. This will cost roughly $1.5 billion. But the construction floor area, the unit cost will be 47,000 or so per square meter. In paragraph 19, the paper explains that the cost reflects the fact that the structure will be built on an elevated deck. But the last sentence in the paragraph says that the construction unit cost is comparable to that of similar projects carried out by the government. I would like the government to provide the cost of similar construction projects involving market. Now, in paragraph 19, it says that the structure has to be built, the superstructure has to be built on an elevated deck. Can we have a breakdown of the proportion of the costs? No, apart from a clean market, we also need a structure that's environmental friendly. I propose that you should put in features that will help avoid bacteria. And now, see, there are features involving antibacterial measures and air conditioning, and these are good. There will also be recycling measures for food waste. I applaud such arrangements. 2 weeks ago, I was on a visit to the smart unit at the Convention and Exhibition Center. The EMSD showed us the technologies, well-developed technologies. But in the paper, it only says sensors motion sensors, etc., but there is no reference to a smart toilet management system. So why the absence? I would like an explanation from the government. I thank the member for his questions. I will invite the Director of Architectural Services to tell us more about the cost. I would like to make 2 points here. For the Tin Shui Wai New Market, this will be the first project involving a new market project. This will be an elevated structure on an elevated deck. There are no other examples we can follow. The paper has set out the costs. I will invite the Director of Architectural Services to elaborate on the point, and then I will address the other 2 points. Mr. Edward Tse. Thank you, Chairman. Now we have taken reference from some other projects, such as the Aberdeen project. Now we looked at the modification project involving the Aberdeen market. The cost for the Aberdeen project is roughly $35,000 per square meter. This project is slightly more costly, but members may want to note that for this project, we will have to put in place a large number of temporary traffic arrangements. On Tin Fok Road, we will have to build a new platform to build this market. After you consider these factors, the cost here is actually comparable to the Aberdeen market. Chair, can we get the government to provide us with supplementary information after the meeting? Can they show us how much the Aberdeen market costs and how this project costs after deducting the part about the platform for the structure to be built? Under Secretary, can you keep your response succinct? Now, for the green facilities, there will be recycling services for styrofoam boxes. There will also be recycle bins and recycle bins specifically for food waste. Now, as for the smart toilet facilities, we are working with the EMSD on pilot projects. We're trying things out at public toilets. We will learn the lessons and then consider whether the smart toilet facilities will also be put in place at the toilets at public markets. Mr. Chen Pui Leung, 4 minutes. This is a new proposal involving a novel construction method because this will involve build a structure on an elevated deck. I have questions about the construction safety issues. You will still have traffic on the road, on Tin Fok Road, that is. During the construction, even if you have a small piece of loose debris on the road, that piece of debris can cause serious traffic accidents. Can the government tell us what safety measures will be put in place during construction to ensure the safety of the road users during the construction? Undersecretary, please. I thank the member for his questions. Now I will invite the Director of Architectural Services to elaborate on the point. During the construction at different phases, there will be temporary measures. We will have to move things around. So some of the traffic will have to be going through other parts. There will be special measures in place. The Director of Services, Architectural Services, will elaborate on the points to address the members' concerns.
Yes, please. Chairman, thank you. Thank you for the question. The site safety is something we attach a lot of importance to. We have to consider certain situations like the pedestrians and the construction team and also the motorists. In terms of pedestrian safety, there will be sufficient covered passageway to make sure that safety will be guaranteed. Second, we need to put in place the temporary traffic arrangement, and we also have regard to the safety of the site staff. We would have the fencing and railing on the road to make sure that there will be sufficient buffer between them and the traffic, and also the motorists. When we put in place the railing, we would consider whether the sight line would be obstructed, the cleanliness on the carriageway, to make sure that there will not be any debris that would undermine driving safety. In the course of work, there will be a lot of prefab units that would be hoisted there, and it would be easier if you have these facilities, wouldn't it? Chairman, on Tin Fuk Road, at the new platform, we basically use the prefab slabs and also columns. Mr. Chen? Right, if you use prefabricated units, will you be closing the road in the course of work? Director? Yes, indeed. During construction, we will do this in section by section. We'll make sure that the prefabricated units will be hoisted in a way that it will be safe on the road. Mr. Stephen Ho, the Tin Shui market, a former DAB member, advocated this quite a long time ago. Now, with regard to this project, I'm not terribly happy about it. No, I'm sure that the director knows what I am not happy about. Now, basically, there is no live chicken store there. I think it is the SAR government's duty to make sure that there is good supply. I think we have to be grateful to Dr. Koh Wing Man, and otherwise we would not have seen any live poultry in the public markets. According to existing policies, there are 30 chicken farms. They have to supply them the stock to the wholesale market, and before being sent to the slaughterhouses. Now, for these 130 retail sites, and some of the people have retired due to old age. In Yuan Estate, the store has already closed. There are only 130 stores that are selling live chickens. Now, we are seeing a decline in the number of these stores. So I'm wondering whether the government should include these live chicken stores in the market so that we can maintain the supply of live chickens, to avoid a situation, an absurd situation where there are 4 live chicken stores in one single market. Now, I've been hearing this for about a decade now, and for you to not consider this, I feel utterly disappointed. But my party member is telling me that indeed there are other members who said the same, that we should not let the chicken stores get in the way of the development of the market. Now, for these 130 slaughter points, if it is down to 110 in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, will you be converting some other places for the live chickens to be slaughtered and sold? Now, if I have to be kept waiting longer for this to happen, I'm not sure how long I'll be kept waiting for. Right, at the FEH panel, during the discussion of this Tin Shui market, there was some heated discussion on this. Yes, please. I'd like to approach this question on two levels. I'll be talking about the global situation first, and then I'll be talking about Tin Shui Wai. In 2017, there was a consultancy study which collected public views regarding the live chicken stores, and the status quo was recommended. Now, we have existing markets and new markets. For existing markets, like the Aberdeen market and Laiwan market, in the course of re-provisioning, we would provide stores with better ventilation for this purpose. Now, for new market, the member is concerned about the numbers. If the number is declining, is it likely that new live chicken stores can be provided? We have listened, we have heard members' views, we've certainly considered that. And we also have to consider the arrangement in connection with slaughter and retail as well. Like, coming back to the Tin Shui Wai market, it is elevated, and we have very stringent hygiene requirements for live chicken stores. There is a need to be for segregation. We will have an exclusive lift for the live chickens. Subject to the passage of the Finance Committee, we will get on with the project for completion in 2027, in 5 years' time, to meet the local demand. In Tin Shui Wai, we have 2 licenses for live chickens, and there are channels for people to sell live chickens in the district. As I said, the government will consider members' views. And for new markets to be built, we'll see whether there is a room for live chickens to be provided. Mr. Ho, well, you are still thinking about how long it's going to take you for contemplation. Well, you've pointed out the problems. You have also identified the solution. Maybe you need the exclusive lifts. Why don't you consider this in this particular market? So it is impossible for this to be incorporated in this market. Well, you have identified the solutions. The question is, why don't you do it? I think at this point in time, you have to make preparation for the future. Now, if you don't provide this in this market, then it is a non-starter. I think the member has a point in his in raising his concerns. Director. Yes, we heard that the member is concerned about Tin Shui Wai, and there is provision of live chickens. Now, for this particular market, we do have a timetable for that. In Kutong North, in NDA, Zhangguanou, there will be new markets coming on stream, and we will take that opportunity to see whether there is room for the provision. So it is still non-committal, isn't it? For NT North, she's not telling me whether there will be any market like this. I mean, I'm hearing the same thing 10 years on. All right, we've been spending quite a long time on this item now. The Deputy Director talked about the timing. I'm none the wiser. If you say that you need to provide an additional lift, it doesn't get in the way of the progress. But if you retrofit that in future, there will be further problems. Ms. Andrew Lam, 4 minutes. Chairman, I appreciate the design here in Hong Kong. For you, it's not anything new to build on top of carriageways, and I think this is a step in the right direction. We are very concerned about the cost. If you take out the foundation work, it is $170 million for the 0.8 hectare. That's something like 21,200 per square meters. If you compare this number with the previous one regarding the cavern, if you merely relocate the cavern, it is $58,000 per square meter. If you take out the relocation, if you just look at the foundation work, it is $25,000 per square meters. If you compare with the next project, that piece of land that is a formed piece of land, anyone in engineering would know about this. If you look at the next project, the foundation work, $29,000 per square meters. In this day and age, if you resume a piece of rural land, it would be $16,600 per square meters. That doesn't include any foundation work and engineering work, just the resumption cost. Now, why I say this is because I hope that the government should consider building more on top of carriageways, in particular in the light of the fact that prefabricated construction is so popular. It wouldn't be as expensive as it would be for the resumption of other sites. Why can't you take advantage of the carriageway and provide the facilities on top? But that would be far more cost effective. Certainly, for the other projects, let's not talk about the planning because of the cost condition. It would certainly be more expensive. Now, for these facilities, you don't have to build very high in the NDA, so you might wish to consider this mode of construction. Take full advantage of the land resources. Deputy Director, thanks very much. I see whether the Director of Architectural Services has got anything to add. I agree with the member that we have this elevated structure because we're not occupying the land. The land does have its own value. This elevated project has a very good justification in that sense. Now, we do have a certain constraints, and we do have to consider the ventilation. There are some residents nearby. I think member has got a point there. When we plan new projects, perhaps we should consider more elevated mode. I would certainly take this to the government and then elevate upwards to the Bureau. Mr. Duncan Chiu. Chairman, thank you. I support this Tin Shui Wai market project, and the Tin Shui Wai residents do really want to have a new market there. This announcement was made in 2018, and there have been a lot of investigative works that have been done. This may be in the cost area, and I'm sure that the site condition would be fit, that we're going to be using the MIC 3 stories plus the roof. Why is it going to take us 5 years from the announcement to the completion? People will have to be waiting for anything up to 10 years for this to materialize. Why such a long time? Can you shorten the period? And also the market will produce a lot of waste, and you are resorting to some environmental friendly measures like the collection of the foam boxes and the handling of the kitchen waste. In the market, the trouble is the tenants may not be willing to use the facilities. Now, when it comes to tender, I think you have to make sure that the tenants would have to observe the waste segregation model, because otherwise they can't be bothered using the facilities. In the seafood markets, if they do not handle the waste appropriately, they will be kicked out. So when it comes to the management, will you make it mandatory for them to follow this particular model? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the member for his comments. I will invite the Director of Architectural Services to elaborate on whether the construction time frame can be compressed. This project will take 5 years to complete. We have to minimize the impact on the people. We also maintain a traffic flow on the road. There are traffic facilities nearby. We have to minimize the impact on the people who have to take the public transit. Now, the member made a good point about the recycling. Say the styrofoam boxes, they will be generated. The food waste will also be generated. Now, the software also matters. Now, we will have a new way of management. The contractor managing the market will keep an eye on the store tenants. The FEHD will also be enforcing the regulations. Say someone breaches the rules, we will penalize the relevant party, and that will have an impact on the prospect of that party to have the lease renewed. So we will be following up on both the hardware and the software. Anything to add from you, Mr. Edward Chair? Thank you, Chair. Now, we are not building on top of the ground. Now, we have to undertake a lot of work relocating and reprovisioning facilities like bus stops. We also have to make changes to the pipes. This procedure will take time, and after all these preparations, and then we proceed with the piling. The piling will happen right next to the MTR station, so this step will take time. And then we have an elevator structure. Now, how do we speed up the work? So we will be using prefabricated modules. For the store areas, we will be adopting the prefabricated stores manufactured in the mainland, and then they will be moved to the site. So we will be coming up with ways to compress the time it takes. Now, it was supposed to be my turn, but I will put my questions later. Now we will hear from Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. A previous member of electrical, Mr. Leung Chi-chung, has been following and championing a market in Tin Shui Wai. I have been part of meetings about this market. I want to see this market completed as early as possible so that people have more options when they do their groceries. My question today has to do with traffic on Tin Fuk Road. I was at a meeting with Mr. Leung Chi-chung and the relevant government departments. You may recall a concern we raised on Tin Fuk Road. Tin Fuk Road is a trunk road. It's a major road in the area. After you have the market in place, the concern goes like this. There will be loading and unloading of goods with lorries coming in and out. Will that add to the pressure on the traffic flow? Based on the plans in Annex 2, Enclosure 2, there is an ingress and egress, as well as the loading and unloading area for lorries. Now you have an entrance here. Say you have a lot of goods vehicles in the area. Will that be creating a lot of pressure on the traffic flow on Tin Fuk Road? There is just one ingress, vehicular ingress, in the plan. Do you have other ideas to take pressure off the traffic flow on Tin Fuk Road? This is a point we specifically raised at our previous meeting, so I just want to see what your ideas are. Undersecretary, please. Now, the ASD may have something to add, but I would like to make a point here. There will be 6 slots for loading and unloading. There will also be 5 goods elevators for store tenants to use. We looked at the examples of 8 markets. the ratio of stores to goods lift as well as the number of stores to goods vehicles spots. Now we have plenty of spots in the market. When the goods vehicles arrive, there will be an area, air-conditioned area. There will also be a store area to store the goods that can speed up the moving of goods. There will also be a day-to-day management of the market. And there will also be coordination on the timing of loading and unloading. We will also avoid obstruction of traffic on the road. We got in touch with the transport department that between the light rail station and a building nearby, there will also be measures to avoid causing disruption to Tin Fok Road. We've considered a range of measures. The Director of Architecture Services may have something to add. I have nothing to add. Thank you, Chair. Next, Mr. Tony Tse. Chair, I support the modernization of our markets. Now, the progress of constructing these markets is also close to my heart. Apart from according priority to infrastructure, we also have to be mindful of the fact that markets matter a lot to local residents. I'm sure that Undersecretary and your team will want to make sure the markets are completed quickly so that the market, the completion ties in with the population intake. This is to avoid that people having to go to a different district just to do their groceries, like what you have in other areas. This is also about making good use of the land, something that I have been an advocate of. This project will cost more because this will be a structure on an elevated deck. There will also be measures to minimize the impact on the traffic. Given these factors, we will have to spend more money, and that just makes sense. So I support this proposal. Now, the hardware. I believe the Architecture Services Department has put in a lot of effort and thought into the hardware. As for the software, you need to get things right with the design. Now look at the older markets. You have wet floors. People do shoppings, they just don't like the wet floors. Now, turning to the management, when you contract out the management and you have an underperforming contractor, what will be done? At what intervals will you be considering a renewal of the contracts? When you have contract terms that are too short, then there will be little interest. But when you have contract terms that are too long, it will be hard to get new contractors. So I would like a response from the Undersecretary on these points. Undersecretary. Now we attach importance to the management of the market. On matters like small-scale repairs, security and cleaning, the contractors have to undertake the work, and we will be monitoring the performance of the contractors. The contract terms will be 3 years. We will have a look at the performance of the contractors before we proceed. For modernization or new markets, they have to meet high standards. I'll take wet floors as an example. We have a smart monitoring system. When you have clogged drains, the smart system will be triggered and we will have a look at what happens. For stores selling wet goods, we will also be looking at the drainage. Now for fish stores, there will be meshed wire meshes. There will also be drain system and slippery-proof tiles on the floor, so that users will be happy with the environment of the market. No further questions from me. So we will move on to Mr. Gary Zhang, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. At district level and at other meetings, we have discussed this proposal about this market. So I want to follow up on the question about the connectivity to Tinshui Y MTR station. I've done a number of site visits. There's room for improvement when it comes to the connection to Tinshui Y MTR station. Many people may visit the market after knocking off. So there will be a lot of people. So how's the progress in terms of the connection to the MTR station? The MTRC has indicated their willingness to cooperate. So is there any finalized plan in terms of enhancing the connection to MTR station? Now I want to touch on another problem. In enclosure 3, about the first floor of the market, I raised a point. For someone exiting MTR station, the Tinshui MTR station, if they want to enter the market, they have to go through this podium. For someone who's not visiting the market, say they're going to Tin Yu Estate, other housing estate, they will have to go through the market before they can take the escalator to their respective housing estate. That is not a great way to divert or arrange the flow of people. This is inconvenience for the people, and this is poor management for the market. But I see the latest plan shows the same arrangement. Why this arrangement? I looked at district council papers. The estimated cost was $1.2 billion, but this time around the cost is $1.5 billion. I get that there are difficulties with the construction, but why this major discrepancy in the estimated cost of construction? Undersecretary, please. Now I will address the point about the district council papers and the current cost, and also the point about the connection to the MTR station. The Director of Architectural Services will also elaborate on these points. Now, we have been in touch with the legislative councillors, local residents, and the MTR Corporation. For this new market, it's next to the West Rail Line station, that is the Tinshui Y station. We explore the possibility of having more exits and entrances. Now, but there are planned rooms and other facilities in the MTR station, so there are challenges. But we will continue to explore such possibilities with the MTR Corporation. Now, especially after we have selected a contractors. Now, for Exit B, we have taken on board members' views. Now, how do we spread out the people flow in the area? And there will be arrangements. We will continue to discuss with the MTR Corporation, the passageways, etc. The Director of Architectural Services can tell us more in a moment. In 2020, in March that year, we talked to the Yunlong District Council. They were talking about the price back then. So the estimate was $1.2 billion back then. But in this paper now, this is about the money of the day prices. This is $1.5 billion. So we're talking about we're using different bases. So this is not about cost overruns. And we're talking about different bases in terms of the cost estimate. I will now invite the Director of Architectural Services to tell us about the MTR station.
Right, we've spent quite a long time on this item. I think we have heard a detailed explanation from you already. And Director, anything to add? Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for the comments. This is a preliminary layout. Now, the escalators can be shifted to facilitate the residents. We can certainly do this in the detailed design. Like the Undersecretary said, 1.2 billion. The price tag goes back to some years ago. We're talking about MOD prices for 1.5 billion. So we have built the inflation into the equation. That's the money of the day price. That explains the discrepancy there. Last speaker for this item, Mr. Edward Lau, and I put this to the vote. We have 4 items on the agenda. I think we may only just start the third one today. Mr. Lau, Chairman, thank you. Certainly, we will support this project. Former member, Mr. Leung Chi-chung, started advocating this. We have been lobbying for this to happen, and we got the government's support, and I'm grateful to the government for that. We've been to the site for discussion with the members of the public. We've also been to the site for a site visit. However, I am concerned about the accessibility of the market. This is a good location, lying in close proximity to the MTR station, and when the residents of Tin Yu Estate go there, they have to use this particular footbridge, and you have the market goer, and you also have the Tin Yu Estate residents who will be going there as well. We are very concerned about the location, so we suggested that there is a short gap between the market and the MTR station. Perhaps we can make direct connection between the MTR and the market. So this exit D design, the FHD and the Bureau have engaged the MTRC for discussion, and both of you agree with the arrangement, but I haven't seen any changes to the plan. And my question is, prior to this going to the FC, will you be having an agreement with the MTRC to show that exit D can be widened? Undersecretary, thanks very much for the comments. Now for exit D, we have had discussion with the MTRC, and we have already explained this. We're fully aware of members and the residents' concerns. Perhaps we can do something about the gap to improve the accessibility, and we will continue with the discussion. And certainly we can explore this with the MTRC as to whether we can do this before the FC. We're not sure. Mr. Lau? In the budget, have you factored in this subject to an agreement? Undersecretary, I defer to the ASD. In putting together the budget, I think we have considered this. Director, yeah, this is a small area. The budget can certainly cover this element of work. Mr. Lau, I hope that there will be an undertaking that you will be exploring with MTRC for an opening to be provided there. All right, unless members have any further questions, I put this item to the vote with those in favor of PWSC 2022-23. 28, please raise their hands. Right, unanimously. I think members voting are in favor of this project, so this paper has been endorsed. So according to the rule, we have to vote whether we recommend that this paper be discussed again at the FC. Now the proposal is PWSC proposes the FC further discuss item 28. If this is endorsed, then the FC will have further discussion. If this is rejected, there will be no more discussion at the Finance Committee. With those in favour, please raise their hands. None? Those against? So no more discussion at the FC. Majority of members do not see the need. So the item is rejected. All right, moving on to the next item. I thank you very much, officials, for being with us for that item. So we're dealing with items that are of concern to the community. The next one is item number 3, 203SC Community Hall at Sai Yi Street, Mongkok. This is paper PWSC 2022-23-29. This is to recommend the upgrading of the project to Cat A at an estimated cost of $84 million in money of the day prices. On the 11th of July, the administration consulted the HAP, the Home Affairs Panel, and members supported the idea of this paper being discussed by the PWSC. The highlights of the meeting have been circulated to members on the 24th of October. We have with us for this item Mr. Clarence Leung, Under Secretary for HYAB, Ms. Renata Cheng, Chief Architect, Mr. Jason Lai, Architect, Ms. Eureka Chung, Deputy Director of Home Affairs, Mr. Edward Yu, District Officer Yao Chin Bong, and Mr. Derek J, District Planning Officer. There are 6 members, Mr. Michael Tin, Dr. Tik Chi Yun, Mr. Kissen Yang, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Lemon Kwong, and Mr. Vincent Cheng. Mr. Michael Tin, 4 minutes, please. Well, looking at this paper, I'm not sure whether this community hall is a standalone project or whether it's part of a commercial development. According to the paper, it seems that this is part of a commercial development. Now, with the co-location of the community hall and the commercial development, will there be any problems in terms of management and also construction? Under Secretary. Chairman, thank you. This community hall will be situated in a commercial development. Many government facilities follow this arrangement. Now, for community hall, the North Point Community Hall and also the Mongkok Community Hall in Langham Place also follow this model. For the experience, I defer to the DO of the district. Yes, DO, please. Chairman, thank you. The Undersecretary referred to the Mongkok Community Hall. It is actually situated in the Langham Place in the same building. The Mongkok Community Hall has a separate access. So in terms of management, it doesn't really have anything to do with the management of the commercial premises. Mr. Tin? So you have a separate access. It would be similar to other projects of similar nature. You have separate access and there will be no problem with management, and construction, no problem either. Undersecretary, thanks very much, Mr. Tin. Indeed, in the land sale conditions, we would specify that the developer will have to build a community hall with separate access. In the light of our previous experience, there are no problems with construction, nor with management. All right, quite a number of members have pressed the button to speak. We may not be able to get this out of the way today. I'd like to, however, squeeze in more members. We have the council meeting today. Perhaps we have the meeting extended to 11:15. Dr. Tick, I support this funding proposal. According to the paper, this will be put in the 2023 land sale program, and the developer will be building, designing, and the fitting out of the community hall, whereas the government will shoulder the construction cost. So for the government to hand this construction to the developer, how do you go about monitoring the progress? If they fail to measure up to the progress, will there be any penalty? In Zhongguanou, there was a site where footbridge will have to be built as part of the commercial project, but the developer has been dragging his feet on the footbridge. They're more concerned about the sale of the premises. Now, how are you going to be monitoring the developer to complete the whole thing in accordance with the government's instruction? Second, in the land sale conditions, it would be stipulated that the facilities will have to be built by the developer. In the land sale condition, why don't you make this the responsibility of the developer? Undersecretary. Right, let me address the question briefly and then hand the floor to the ASD. In OZP, it is a commercial 4 kind of development. With any new development, approval will have to be sought from the town planning board. That's the first hurdle. Also, in the land sale condition, we would specify all the requirements that we have for the development. Like we need to have a separate access for the community hall. As to the construction time, this again will be spelled out in the sale agreement to protect the government. Also, for these $84 million, it is the MOD price, and that's the ceiling that we impose on the pricing. ASD. Yes, Madam Jane. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Tick, Dr. Tick, for the question as to how we can control the timing. The developer would engage the authorized person. We would have meetings with them to make sure that they will show us the progress, and the HAB will also scrutinize their plan to make sure that they follow all the requirements in the land sale condition. So we will be able to track their progress to make sure that they will not be falling behind schedule. Any penalty if they fail to follow the schedule. Yes, Chief Architect. Any penalty for delays. The Lands Department will specify that they will have to complete the project within 78 months, including the community hall. If there is any delay, there will be penalty. Financially, we will be liaising with the HAD and also the developer regarding the timetable.
Next, Mr. Kitson Yang, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I support this proposal. This community hall will be on Sai Yi Street in Mong Kok, but it's just one street away from the Kowloon City. There has been a lack of a community hall in the area. There's little in the way of an open space or performance venue for the local residents nearby. This community hall will meet the need of the local residents. So I support this plan, but I do have some questions. I want to follow up on the point raised by Dr. Tick Ji Yun just then. Now, why aren't we including this community hall in the land sale? So that whichever property developer gets the tender will have to build the whole thing and finance the whole thing themselves. Now, we're paying for this project. This will cost $84 million. How does it compare to a community hall that we built ourselves, like in normal cases? Now, there will be 450 seats in the community hall. This is a standard to be adopted by community halls in general. But the local residents have indicated that that's not enough seats for residents. Can you relax it so that you can have 500, 600 seats in a community hall? That's something that will bring real benefit to the local residents. Undersecretary. Thank you, Chair. I will take the last question first. Now, the size of the community hall. We looked at a number of options and then we consulted the community. Now, having 450 seats will be a balance between different factors. When you have a large site, then you may not be able to have everyone seated, even if you have a larger facility. Oh, this is a balance. Mr. Yang just mentioned. Under the land sale agreement, the property will have to construct the community hall. So we will be reimbursing the property developer for the construction cost of $84 million. This arrangement will be written into the land sale agreement. Now, of course, this community hall costs money. Now it's all about commercial considerations. No developer will be constructing a community hall for the government and then just delivers it to the government. The government will have to pay for the facility somehow. Ms. Cheng, any elaboration from you? Chair, the second question from Mr. Kitson Yang. The cost of $84 million, is that similar to other similar projects? This is comparable to similar public works projects. Now, take the North Point Community Hall as an example. That community hall is also part of a private development. So in estimating the cost for this project, we have looked at the North Point example. Now, in money of the day prices, the prices are similar between this project and the North Point project. No follow-up questions. We move on to Mr. Andrew Lam, 4 minutes. 2 questions. I get it. There's a cost to any construction project. But now we're like commissioning a developer to build this community hall. But the government has tried different things. As Mr. Kitson Yang just mentioned, that is, make it part of the land sale agreement such that the property developer constructs the building and delivers the building to the government department to operate. Now, why are we commissioning a developer to construct it instead of the other alternatives? Now, my second question has to do with the construction time frame. In 2017, district councils expressed support for the proposal. Then in 2018, the town planning board approved the project. In 2022, this proposal was discussed at the panel on home affairs. The construction time will be 78 months. This will be written into the land sale agreement. These are just small projects. Will similar projects take a similar amount of time to complete? I'm not aware of any specific challenges for this site that will require 78 months in the construction time. Is this a conservative estimate? So for the government, is there a way for you to complete the project more quickly? So this is about the construction time frame. Undersecretary, please. I will invite my colleagues from the ASD to elaborate. My understanding is that 78 months will be the requirement of the Lands Department. This is the cap, the maximum time the property developer can take to construct the structure. We will hear from Ms. Cheng from the ASD. Now, this involves a large-scale commercial development. So the time frame of 78 months will cover a large commercial building. This will also cover the site formation. There will be 2 pedestrian footbridges with greening connecting to the Mong Kok East MTR station. An existing footbridge in Mong Kok will also be connected to the project. Now, no developer has submitted a timetable yet. Now, but it's possible that a developer comes along and submits a timetable with a construction time frame of less than 78 months. Now, if we can have a community hall completed sooner, and the entrance and exit is not obstructed by the construction site, that is entirely possible. Any follow-up questions from Mr. M? Now, you said that it's possible that you can have a separate entrance and exit for the community hall from the larger commercial building. Now, the property developer may have a different plan. But for the property developer, they may want to complete the commercial part first and drag things out with the community hall because the government gives them a time limit of 78 months. You were just giving me some very basic information. My question was, does this community hall really take 78 months to complete? Undersecretary. I thank Mr. Lam for his follow-up questions. I note his comments. I want to stress that the 78 months represent the upper limit in terms of the construction time frame. Now, when we come to the implementation part of it, we can discuss whether there's a way to speed things up. The member wishes to know whether there's a way to get it completed sooner, and whether we can have a clearer target, whether we can speed things up in the land sale agreement. We'll move on to Mr. Leung Man Kwong, 4 minutes. Chair, I support this project. In Yau Chim Mong, there are just 2 community centers or community halls. That's far from enough to cater to the needs, the day-to-day needs of the local residents. There are local meetings for incorporated owners. For example, they lack the venue for such meetings. If you have a new community hall that will cater to the needs of the meetings and other social activities, so that's a benefit for the local people. But I want to find out from you, for the works project, under emergency situations, say a power outage, a community hall will be made available to the public, and when you have very hot days or very cold days, the community halls become shelters for people. So when it comes to power supply and water supply, will there be a backup supply of water and power such that when you do have an outage or water supply disruption, the people can go to the community hall and find there is supply? Is that possible in the construction? Now, other members touched on the land sale conditions. I want to raise a question about the location. Now, can you specify the location of the community hall in the land sale agreement? Can it be on the ground floor, or somewhere easily accessible through pedestrian footpaths? Now, for a commercial developer, if you do not specify that the community hall has to be on the ground floor or directly connected by a footbridge, the developer may put the community hall elsewhere because those are the commercially valuable slots. And for the commissioning date of the community hall, this community hall will have its own entrance and exit. Now, can you have this community hall commissioned before the larger commercial project is completed? Can you actually write that into the land sale agreement? Can we get a response from the government, please? Undersecretary, please. I'll take the second question first. In the land sale agreement, apart from separate entrance and exit, we will also require the developer to put the community hall on a lower floor and easily accessible location. We want this community hall to be accessible to the local residents. Now, backup water supply and backup power supply, there will be such arrangement. Local residents have also put forward similar views. The backup supplies are also available at other community halls. Now, my colleague can tell us more about this. Back then, when we had this outage in Yunlong, we opened the Yunlong Community Hall with water supply and power supply for the local people. Deputy Director, anything to add from you? As the Undersecretary just said, for every community hall, there will be backup power supply and relevant facilities. At these community halls, local groups can hold activities. A key role of these community halls is that in inclement weathers and when you have emergencies, we will open these community halls for use by the local residents. So there will be arrangements in place to cater for the needs during emergencies. We have noted members' views. 78 months will be a ceiling. Apart from the community hall, there will also be projects of the pedestrian footbridges. There will also be public light bus stops. So all these things take time to complete. Now, we've noted members' views. So we will consider adding a clause in the land sale agreement. If this project can be completed sooner, then the community hall can be commissioned and made available for use earlier. 3 members have pressed the button and requested to speak, but as I said, that we have the council meeting coming up, we cannot extend the meeting further. There's just over 1 minute to go. So some members will have to speak at the next meeting. We will have, so for Mr. Vincent Cheng and Dr. Jonas Ho, they will have to speak on a different occasion. We have passed 2 proposals. These 2 proposals will be submitted for consideration by the Finance Committee. The next meeting will be on November 9th at 8:30 a.m., between 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Members, please attend the meeting in November. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.